Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about some of the difference between a military combat situation and a civilian self-defense type of situation. This is something that I kind of came up with 12 years ago because about 12 years ago I was getting a lot of combat vets from Iraq, Afghanistan that were coming to me for civilian training classes. I guess because they thought it would help them out with their resumes, because you had a lot of vets coming back trying to get work in either law enforcement or security. If for whatever reason they felt that if they took my civilian gun training classes, it would help them on their resume. So, that's how this comparison sort of came apart. Because during the classes, what I would do is I would basically just pull out a piece of paper, basically draw a line like this, and I would have them tell me what they thought were some of the differences between a military combat situation and a civilian self-defense situation. So, after I did this type of class, I guess 10 times or so, I started seeing some things come up repetitively. Going into the class, I had been trained as a civilian self-defense instructor. I had, basically I kind of relied on the vets to give me the information with regards to the military combat side of this, and then we were able to kind of draw these comparisons. Okay, so a couple of things that came up. First thing was the fact that in a military combat type of situation, you're in a combat zone. Okay, by virtue of the fact that you're in the combat zone, you're issued weapons. You can expect that you're going to be shooting at enemy. All right, so that's one of the differences with being in a combat situation in a combat zone. Interestingly enough, I found out from a lot of these vets is, even in places like out in the mountains in Afghanistan, the enlisted people were not issued weapons until they were actually going to go on a mission. So they didn't walk around the bases with the weapons. So at the point that they were issued weapons, it was a good chance that they were going to be using them. Okay, that they were expected to be using them. By contrast, the contractors, right, the people that were not enlisted in the military, that were there as contractors, they kept their weapons on them at all times, and they functioned kind of like a quasi security forces within the bases. Okay, so I thought that was very interesting. I thought I should share that with you guys, because I also, I trained, I did these classes for veterans at all levels. Like some of them was like just basic infantry, some of them were cooks, some of them were military contractors, some of them were special forces guys within the military. So I did a lot of these classes at that time. So again, going back to between 2008 2010, and this is some of the information I got out of them. And like I said, I would just kind of let them tell me what they thought were the differences, and then I would add information from the civilian defense side. So on the first thing was the fact that on the military side, you're in the combat zone, you're issued weapons, you can expect that you're going to be shooting them at people. Okay. By comparison, in civilian self-defense type of situation, there's this concept of judgment. You kind of have to decide on your own, at what point something becomes a deadly threat, where you have to use deadly force. Right? So there's this big judgment thing that's involved on the civilian side, whereas on the military side they have concepts like orders and rules of engagement. Right? They have a much clearer sense that, hey, your orders are to go here, hold that position, or attack that position. So they have a much clearer sense of when they're supposed to be shooting, when they're not supposed to be shooting. And in general, in a combat theater, if they're given weapons, they expect that they're going to be shooting. Okay, they're going to be shot at, and they're going to be returning fire. Okay? That's what they can expect. So that's not something that's present in a civilian self-defense type of situation. And because we have in the military situation, they have orders and rules of engagement, right? That to some extent reduces the personal judgment, right? They're subject to less legal threats. Okay, not that they can't make a legal mistake where they can find themselves court-martialed, but it's the situation is generally is a little bit more laid out, where they're following orders more and making less personal judgment decisions. Where in a civilian self-defense type of environment, you have that added stress, okay, of having to make your own judgments and having to deal with potential legal threats. Okay, so it's interesting because in some ways, the military combat situation is more stressing. In other ways, the civilian defense type of situation can also be stressing. Just different types of stress. Okay, so the judgment part on the civilian side is a big stress factor. The potential for being subject to legal threats is a greater stress factor, right? Where as you're making decisions, you have to consider, what are the legal ramifications, of what you're doing. So you don't have somebody to guide you the way that you would do in the military situation, where you have a commander, where you can have somebody that you can go, hey, they're doing this. What are we supposed to be doing? Okay, so many times in a civilian self-defense situation, you have to make judgment decisions not only on your own, but you also have to respond on your own. Okay, whereas in a military combat type of situation, you have unit support. Okay, so the unit support is a big issue over here. So one of the questions that I'm typically asked in my self-defense classes, right, is like the people will be like, well, you're teaching us to do this, that, the other thing. How are we supposed to do all this? Make all these decisions so quickly in a stressful type of situation where our lives are under threat, right? And then they'll usually follow that up with, how do soldiers do that? Well, one of the things that I will bring up, right, again, stemming from my discussion with vets going back 12 years ago, in a military type of situation, because they have unit support. Let's say you have four members in the unit, right? So they're holding these four corners. One guy here, one guy there, one guy here, one person there, right? So you got these four people on these four corners. And let's say this person up here starts taking fire, okay? Well, now you've got these other three guys here that are in a position to see that this person's under attack. They're able to see where the fire is coming through, and they're able to directly answer that attack and help this person out over here. So this person over here, they might be in a situation where they're able to return fire as well, or they may not. They might be in a situation where they're just pinned down, they just put in their heads, under a rock somewhere, because they really can't do anything else. But because there's other members in the unit, who are able to help him out, he's able to survive and basically keep living. Okay. Whereas in a civilian self-defense type of situation, usually you're on your own. Okay. So you have to deal with the threat on your own. Have to make all your own decisions. Now, in many cases, even if you're with somebody else who, let's say, is armed, here's the thing: you might both be armed, but you have not been training together. You have, so even though you both might be capable of defending yourselves individually, you haven't been training as a team. Okay, so you got two people individually, defending themselves, but not a unit of two people, right? Which is different from the military combat unit, where you have a unit that's been training together to respond as a unit. So another big difference between the civilian defense situation versus the military combat situation. You're usually on your own. Even when you're with other people, you're kind of on your own, right? Just because you haven't been training as a unit. Okay. Now, another difference with the civilian self-defense type of situation is your self-defense, or the self-defense of your immediate family, friends, is the priority. Okay. So your priority is defending yourself or defending the people that are with you, that you're close with. Whereas in a military combat situation, the mission often takes priority. Okay, so what that means is that in most missions, self-defense, self-preservation is a priority too. But you might have a mission where, hey, the mission is a greater priority than the lives of individual people within the unit. You might have that type of situation as well. So that you're almost never going to have that situation in a civilian self-defense type of situation, other than let's say defending your kids would be a priority of defending yourself. Okay, so that might be as far as I would go with something like that. The other thing is there's with the military combat situation, to some extent, you have a sense of who your enemy is and who your friends are, and by that what I mean is you know that the people in your unit are your friends. Okay, now you might be in an urban area where you might have enemy mixed in with civilians, but within your own unit you have a good idea of, hey, these guys are all on my side. They're all gonna, we've all been training together. We're all gonna, work through this together. So again, going back to the civilian self-defense type of situation, you might be walking out in the street. You got no, you pretty much, you don't expect that there's going to be enemies out there, right? You don't expect that you're going to be attacked. Whereas in a military combat situation, if you're in a combat zone, you can pretty much, it's a safe assumption that everybody that's not in your unit is a potential deadly threat, right? So you kind of, going through a combat zone with that type of mentality versus in a civilian self-defense type of situation. Hey, when you go shopping, you generally don't think of everybody else, in the supermarket as a potential deadly threat. In general, you think that everybody's not going to want to kill you, right? That there's not any deadly threats. And maybe one in a million, you might run into a situation where somebody is a deadly threat. So that's another difference between the military combat situation and the civilian self-defense type of situation. So, like I said, this what I'm basically doing here is I'm kind of reporting to you guys what combat veterans have told me on this side here, right? And then on this side here, I was able to contribute information from my civilian from the training that I got as a civilian self-defense instructor, and between my information and their information, we were kind of able to put together this little comparison, which I thought might be interesting for you guys. So something for you guys to think about, and like I said, it's not the end all. There's by all means go down to the comment section and put some of your ideas of where you think there might be some similarities or differences, or where you think some of this stuff might not be accurate. Because hey, especially in the military combat type of situation, there's many different theaters of combat. So somebody else's combat experience might be different than the combat experience of the people that I ran into. Okay, I guess the same thing can apply for civilian self-defense type of situation. So, I look forward to hearing comments from you guys. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Talk to you guys soon.